These jerseys make me excited for the future of sports jerseys. And I haven't been excited about sports jerseys in a while. Hi, I'm Megan, aka She Got Game, and welcome to the She Got Game YouTube channel, where we analyze, discuss, and occasionally crash out over all things sports and fashion. This time we're focusing on Group B, and that includes Slovakia, Finland, Sweden, and the host country of Italy. These four countries might be the strongest when it comes to on-ice aesthetics that we're going to see in Olympic ice hockey. All of these jerseys were designed by Nike using sublimation and are available in the NHL and Olympics Pro Shop. Let's start with the host country of Italy. Now, this is the first time that Italy has been in the ice hockey tournament since 2006, and you're probably thinking, Italy, green, white, red, but they actually wear a lot of blue. That's because their main color is Savoy blue. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it in Italian. It's somewhere between a royal blue, a peacock blue, and more of a periwinkle. And we saw that lighter, almost powdery blue color that you might see on North Carolina on their 2006 jerseys. They didn't stand out as much. There was smaller typography, but they definitely made a statement. For these Olympics, they're using a more saturated, brighter blue that honestly reminds me a lot of the Montreal Canadiens blue they use in their jerseys. Let's get into the actual jersey design, and as we start going through all the different uniforms, you'll notice there's a lot of similarities. So if you look at these jerseys compared to, let's say, Czechia, you'll notice they both use the color block in the shoulder area. Here on these white jerseys, you'll notice they have the shoulder detailing in the Savoy blue along with the flourishes, while on the blue jerseys, the Savoy blue is the main color of the jersey with a darker blue on the shoulder and the flourishes. My biggest pet peeve about these jerseys, again, has to do with stripes, except this time it's more of a flourish and they don't line up. So if you look at the seams around the elbow, you can see that the sublimated fabric where it's stitched together, it doesn't actually match. And I'm really disappointed. Milan is a fashion capital. Why couldn't they bring that into the stitching and the design? I mean, I know probably these jerseys aren't fully designed there, but I was hoping for a little more attention to detail on these jerseys given Italy is a fashion country and Milan is a fashion city. When it comes to the main design on the chest of the jersey, we have Italia, green, white, and red, and it kind of has that like puffy retro look that is giving me both late 80s, early 90s, and a little bit early 2000s. It kind of feels very motocrossy. Again, we have another case of stripes not going all the way around. The stripe on the bottom half of the jersey, you'll notice it stops right around the butt. Why is it? Again, what is this obsession with stripes that do not fully go around? Is this just something we don't do anymore in hockey? I don't know. One of the other features of this jersey is the Italian Federation hockey crest, which is on the arm along with the Olympic rings. Someone on Reddit said the neck piece, which you'll find on all these Nike jerseys, looked like a cheese grater that you would use to grate some parm, and now that's all I can see, especially on the Italian jerseys. I think these jerseys are actually really interesting in comparison to what we've seen from Italy in years past, and also in comparison to what else we have in this tournament. I would have liked to see, the patterns matching up on the sleeves and a little more attention to detail. But I think it's interesting, and we already saw them on the ice when Italy won its first match against France in the women's tournament. And I feel like those blue jerseys really pop against the white of the ice, and I think they looked really good in comparison to the French jerseys, and I think they did a pretty decent job in comparison to some of the other jerseys we're seeing in the tournament. So although Italy might not be a very highly ranked ice hockey team, I'm excited to watch them play for aesthetic reasons at least. Now let's move on to Finland, who are the defending gold medal champions from 2022 in Beijing on the men's side. One of the big details they've changed about these jerseys is now the lion is less yellow and more gold. One of the other differences you'll notice if you look at Finnish jerseys of years past is that the lion has gotten bigger and bigger. Finland also used red as almost like a highlight color in the crest and for different details, but now that color is gone. It's now the two shades of blue, the gold, and white. Unlike other jerseys in the tournament that have stripes that don't go all the way around, they do have one large chest patterned area that goes along the arms and the chest. It almost has like a abstract kind of feel that feels very Finnish, very artsy, very interesting. In the last Olympics, they had that similar chest and arm stripe, but instead it looked more like mesh. I do feel like Finland could have benefited from maybe a little more contrast, whether it would be at the collar or at the bottom hem. The main difference between the Hockey Federation logo of Finland and what we're seeing on the jerseys for the Olympics is that the lion here is much bigger. It doesn't have the crest. It also doesn't have Suomi written on it, which used to be something we always saw on Finnish jerseys. I get the sense on these jerseys they want to really highlight the golden lion. I do think it's interesting that this is really the only second Olympic jersey from Finland that doesn't have a contrasting element. In the past, they had all sorts of different elements. Sometimes we're a little bit busy, but there isn't as much detail on these jerseys. I'm really curious to see how the chest elements and how that abstract art on it plays, and maybe what the significance is. I wasn't able to find it, but my Finnish is quite limited. I think they could have done a better job of utilizing the sublimation method for maybe adding some more detail into the jersey, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they look on ice with the rest of the uniform, and if they bring in some of these other secondary colors like the lighter blue, the gold, maybe some silver, just to make the whole uniform pop, and if we'll ever see that secondary color of a flourish of red back into the uniforms. Now let's get into Sweden, which if we were doing hockey superlatives, would get most consistent because God, they love their crowns, don't they? Their actual federation logo is really interesting because it's a Viking ship. That's something we don't see in a lot of other teams, is that this sort of historic element. So it's really interesting, and I kind of wish they would play with it more. Obviously, they couldn't use it as their main logo. Now, what's really interesting about these Swedish jerseys is that the color is different. The blue is so much darker than it has been in the past. It's usually a brighter blue, closer to what we're seeing on Italy. The yellow feels very close to those almost highlighter yellow uniforms that we see from the Bruins in the NHL, but this is a very bright yellow. It is not an easy color to wear, especially if you are pale like a lot of Swedes are, so good luck. Sweden has some of the most consistent uniforms we've seen in the Olympics, that we've seen in World Championships, in World Juniors. They love those crowns. I know I sound like a broken record, but again, the stripes do not go around. What's happening? Why can't they do it? It's making me crazy. Anyways, you'll notice there's 2 stripes on the arms right around the bicep area, and the stripes stop right underneath the armpit. Again, they just, I guess, didn't sublimate that part of the fabric to make it match. They don't have a patch for the actual Swedish Hockey Federation, which is interesting. Instead, they have 3 crowns, the Olympic rings, and SWE for Sweden on the right arm as a patch there. The one main thing you'll probably notice about these jerseys is that the crowns have a lot of detail, a lot of texture. That's really what's doing the heavy lifting of the jersey because there's so little detail. Again, it would have been nice to see some contrast. You get it a little bit on the heat press numbers on the back, where you have the yellow popping through the blue on the yellow jerseys and the inverse on the blue jerseys. But there's just not much going on, and I kind of expected better from Sweden. I was hoping to be surprised or maybe interested in what Sweden is doing, but they're just, once again, doing the same old crowns, and I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's very clean and minimal. Quite honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the shade of yellow and blue they picked for this, so I'm curious to see how fans are going to react and how these jerseys look on the ice. Now, let's get to Slovakia. Quite possibly the best jerseys in this tournament and some of the best Olympic hockey jerseys of all time. And I'm not exaggerating. These are stunning. Now, these jerseys are being heralded as some of the best ever because they're actually using sublimation well. Sublimation is really good if you want to get a really bright color and show some contrast and really pop on a poly material. What can I say? These jerseys pop in a way that we haven't seen in years. What's really interesting is the use of the Tetra Mountains in Slovakia as the main detail of these jerseys. So like a lot of jerseys we've seen, right, we have the shoulder detailing. There's white and there's blue. But instead of just using one single color on the rest of the jersey, they're using multiple. They're shading. They're shading on a jersey. Can you believe it? Okay, so we have the majority blue jersey, which has the Tetra Mountains in sort of this like dark, rich blue, like I said, with Italy. Similar sort of shade, like the Canadians blue, and a lighter blue, similar to Italy's sort of periwinkle Savoy blue color, to kind of show the shading and detail in the mountains, which looks, incredible. Then you have a red stripe on top of it, and then the white, and then you have these very clear block numbers on the sides. Some of these other jerseys, I feel like they really missed out on having the numbers be really clear on the shoulders. I don't know why, but Slovakia gets it, right? You also have the crest, which is right in the middle. It's not overwhelming. I think if it was too big, it would be too busy. But it's just the right size, and it kind of fits in with the mountains. And it looks almost like organic to the mountains, right? What's really interesting, too, is the mountain rage goes all over the arms. It doesn't just stop. Who knew? You do see that on the inner arm, there is a little area where they don't fully, connect through, but because there's so much detailing on the rest of the jersey, you don't really notice it. On the primary white jerseys, they have blue on top with the white numbers. Again, the red, that is a common theme between both jerseys, where the sky is red, which is also obviously the main color in the crest of Slovakia. And then you have the mountains, which are white with some shading and kind of like a light gray. But even if you look on the side of the jersey in the panel, it actually goes all the way around. They actually are using the materials to the advantage of showing the details on the mountains. And that is something that we haven't really seen in a lot of other jerseys. I think the use of the sort of silvery gray on the white makes a lot of sense. I'm glad it's not too contrasty, but I feel like when you get up close, you can really see the detail, but on camera, you'll just see a bit of a shadow, and that is such a smart move. And you'll notice that the red sort of like middle stripe, that's the sky, carries through the back too. So it really is able to delineate between the name and the number. And I think that looks great. These jerseys are also probably the best Slovakia has ever worn. They've had sort of a consistent idea of using their crest in the middle. It's always been pretty much the same size, which is interesting. We've seen different sizes on different countries. They've had the red stripe on some of the previous IHF jerseys, but this is the first time they've really understood the balance of the colors. In the past, it's almost felt too stripy, where you've had the 3 stripes, 3 different color details on the jerseys, and then the color block shorts, and then the color block pants. I do think it would be interesting if we saw them wear white or red pants with the primary blue jersey instead of going all blue, like they've modeled it here. But I think we'll have to see how it looks on ice too. But with the blue gloves, it kind of looks sleek. I didn't think we'd be seeing so much blue in this tournament. That's something that I find very interesting. But I think, given how good blue contrasts on white ice, and I think it makes sense, and it looks really great on camera. I think that's also part of it. Like, these are a jersey that's going to stand out, not just if you see someone wearing it, but on camera when everyone's watching at home. And I think that's very cool. And I think that's probably something that the designers kept in mind. And that attention to detail just makes me so happy. And I think we've come to a point, if you are a big hockey nerd or if you're a jersey nerd, you probably are not a big fan of Nike in terms of what they've done with the jerseys, because they can feel so lightweight, they can feel unfinished. But this is a jersey that shows that you can have an ultra lightweight jersey and not have it look like an ultra lightweight jersey. These do not look cheap. These do not look unfinished. These do not look like they are trying too hard to be in other countries. I'm so excited to see an example of good sports design, because I feel like we've been lacking so much with Fanatics taking over everything and having issues with quality, to a lot of these Nike jerseys not really having the same oomph. As someone that's obsessed with both storytelling and how teams can use technology to really show off their designs, obviously Slovakia for me, number one, followed then by Italy, because I really like the way the blue jerseys look on ice. Then I would go Finland, because I love the gold and the lion and how they're simple but still have an impact. And then finally Sweden. All these jerseys I would rank above Group A, besides maybe Czechia. I would probably put Czechia between Sweden and Finland. I think the Slovakia jerseys are going to have the biggest impact, both in the games from a design perspective, but also they're just going to look incredible on the ice and in photos. Stay tuned for Group C, which includes Team USA. It'll be the finale of the 3-part series. At the end of the episode, we'll do a ranking of all 12 teams. I'd love to hear what you think and who's your favorite. See you then.